So coming up this weekend, we're going to see UFC 328 headlined by Khamzat Chimaev as he defends the title against Sean Strickland with another title fight in the co-main event with Josh Van defending the title against Tatsuro Taira. Two really good title fights. I can't really remember the last time we had two banger title fights on one card. I can't remember the last time we had three title fights on one card, but I do wish that we can get that again one day. But just this card is fantastic. I love this card. I'm looking forward to this card. I will admit a handful of fights on this card a little bit lower down I'm not crazy about, but I'll mention them when we get there. This is just a fantastic card. The press conference has a potential to go crazy. I know a lot of people were relying on Sean Strickland to go crazy when he fought against Israel Adesanya when it comes to the press conference, and he brought it. Maybe he's going to go there with Chimaev because, you know, Khamzat Chimaev, he's definitely got a background that could be looked into. But I'm not going to go there on this video. I'm just going to pick the fights about how I see it. And I do think that this is going to be one of those cards that is just going to be delivering. I am expecting finishes. I am expecting knockouts. I am expecting bangers. I think this is going to be fantastic. I cannot wait for it. Before I do get into that, though, I did want to do just a very short Perth recap because I went live. I did a live fight companion with my flatmate, Biggie. And, yeah, we did a live companion for the card. We were both sports betting on the card. Biggie had a big parlay that, unfortunately, was relying on Tim Elliott's shoulders. And then for me, on the other hand, you know, I had a big parlay myself, which hit. I was very happy about that. I was betting on Quillan Salkill to win by KO in round one. What else did I have? Justin Jr. Tuffa by KO round one. I mean, we had a good time on stream there. And so, the next one will be Road to UFC. I'm actually going to go live all 3 days. UFC Macau, Road to UFC Day 1, Road to UFC Day 2. I will go live all 3 days for that one, so definitely keep an eye out for that in the future. Of course, if you want to sign up, see my predictions for PFL, this and that. I did do an article on the We Want Picks website. I did do a video for PFL CO4s. Seems like no one cares about the PFL anymore, to be honest, which is pretty sad, but they kind of did it to themselves, didn't they? Just making really weird decisions when it comes to things like that. But I will be continuing to do that, and the Contender Series is coming out. Road to UFC is coming up in a couple of weeks. I'm going to have to do some big-time articles for that. So definitely keep an eye out for We Want Picks. Sign up using the code ARTEM, and you will get 10% off your first membership. Poster review. It's a good poster, to be fair. Like, it's very basic. It's very easy. But I like it. I think it's effective enough. One of the better posters that we have had recently, because I do think we have had a handful of stinkers. Now, actually reviewing UFC Perth, aside from talking about the sports bets that I was placing on that card. JDM got smoked. He just got absolutely bell-to-bell dominated. If you want my honest opinion on what happened on the fight, I think that JDM got the takedown at the end of round one too easily, and he got it so easily, the game plan actually changed from there. He was having a pretty successful round one, even though I still think he lost round one anyway. Doing what I said he needed to do, which was just pressure box, but ultimately, it doesn't really matter when Carlos Prates is just chopping the leg, landing from range, and Prates didn't even need to rely on his counter-striking because after the first round, JDM, he fought Prates' game, and you just cannot allow Prates to pressure forward. Prates is the most dangerous fighter in the welterweight division when he is moving forward. JDM let him play that game. Aside from that, Brandon Pericic had a big performance. I bet on Brandon Pericic KO as well. Junior Tuffa got back in the win column. I was so excited about that, man. Shout out to that. Sal called out Gamrot for the Serbia card. I think that's a cool fight. Makes sense as well, to be honest, because it just makes sense. And then Cam Ralston got a big win as well. He called out, of course, he called out Vittori for an Australian card. I'm sorry, Cam. I will be honest. I think you might have to go and fight somewhere else because I think he's had his whole UFC career so far in in Australia. Sorry, so they might have to send him to the US or they might even send him to Serbia because I know Italy and Serbia probably aren't that close together, but they're in Europe, so maybe they could do that too. A lot of heavyweights want to be on that Serbia card. Even Louis Sutherland wants to be on there against Tabera, who actually might already be booked for the card. But nonetheless, it was pretty good card, I think. I went 10-3 on picks, and, you know, it's not bad. It's not good enough, though, because I'm trying to lock in. You know, I've been... I didn't actually notice until last week. I'm in the top 5 out of the people that are predicting every single fight. And me and Betsam are tied, so I kind of have to sort of lock in here and really have a few good weeks in a row. Because last year, I don't know if you guys remember or not, I had a massive stinker. The year before, I think I was third on the MMA predictions tracker leaderboards. Last year, I had a stinker. This year, it seems like we're doing everything right. You know, the new methods that I have employed, which is relying on stats a little bit more than I used to, have been working. Anyway, let's just get into it. This is a 5-minute intro. Prime Angelo intro right there, to be honest. Except, I think Angelo's prime intros were maybe 15 minutes. I think one of them was like 45 minutes one day. That was 5.5 minutes. That was a long one. Let's go. Clayton Carpenter versus Jose Ochoa. It might come to a surprise to some, but I don't think it will come to a surprise to most. I am going to be picking Clayton Carpenter in this fight. Now, I'm 2-2 picking Clayton Carpenter fights in his UFC career because, of course, Clayton Carpenter is 2-2 when it comes to the UFC run. I have picked him in every single one of his fights so far. I picked him to beat Ronderos. I picked him to beat Roca. And I did pick him, even though he did lose to Phil Ho and Ulanbekov. And it's quite interesting when I look at Carpenter's fights and I see Jose Ochoa's fights, because I actually think that they both have lost fights the same way. Carpenter has lost his fights in the UFC in the grappling, and Ochoa's 2 losses, except for the Kavanagh fight, did come to the grappling as well. What I mean is he struggled in round 1 in moments against Jorden with Jordan's wrestling, and then he lost to Almabayev because Almabayev took him down 7 times in that fight out of 16 attempts, though. Against Kavanagh, that was a striking fight, but the way that Ochoa has struggled in the promotion has been to the grappling. But then if you actually look at Clayton Carpenter's career, he was taken down and controlled by Ulanbekov despite having his own wrestling success in round 2. Against Phil Ho, I think he attempted the takedown against Phil Ho, but Phil Ho was credited with getting it down to the ground, and Phil Ho ended up submitting him in the first round in that fight. So we have seen both guys struggle with the grappling, but I think the difference between these two guys is Carpenter wants the fight to get down to the grounds. Now, Carpenter, if you aren't familiar, has a big background in martial arts in general. Not necessarily MMA, but I'm talking about pancration. He's beaten Aaron Pico as a junior pancration competitor. He's got a background in wrestling. He's a Golden Gloves boxing champion, which I do think shows in his fights. His hands are the best part of his striking offense. He just kind of got it all. And he's kind of like an Aaron Pico-like prospect, which he has everything, and he just needs to put it all together into MMA to really find a lot of success. And I look at Jose Ochoa, and I see what I would consider one of the most dangerous strikers in the flyweight division. I do understand he's 1-2 in the promotion, but Jose Ochoa has not only just that one win by KO over Cody Jorden, he has some real power. He was getting the respect of Lona Kavanagh on the feet. He was getting the respect of Asut Amabayev on the feet. Jose Ochoa is a very dangerous fighter, and I also think he is going to have a size advantage over Carpenter in this fight, which could be somewhat important, just given the fact that Ochoa really likes to strike from range. He's a shooter box guy, kind of has that Charles Oliveira Muay Thai style in which he's throwing a lot of teep kicks out there, a lot of push kicks out there from range. When he's throwing punches, he's not trying to throw hooks, he's trying to throw those jabs and straights. Whereas Clayton Carpenter is a little bit of the opposite. You know, Carpenter, I would credit with having very good head movement, but he likes to close the distance a lot. He likes to throw his hooks, he likes to shoot his takedowns. Ochoa can time knees quite well. I am going to be picking Carpenter to win this fight, though, because I do still believe in the wrestling. The fact that Carpenter was willing to offensively wrestle against Jafel Filho makes me believe that he's going to go back to that well again, man. We're going to see Carpenter be attempting takedowns on Jose Ochoa. We've seen Ochoa taken down 7 times by Asut Amabayev. Now, Amabayev is a much more proven prospect than Carpenter is, to be fair. But also on top of that, too, Jorden was finding wrestling success in the first round against Ochoa as well. So, in my opinion, it is going to be Carpenter that's going to be winning the minutes, but I actually think that Ochoa is going to hold a striking threat through all 3 rounds, because Ochoa, even in the 3rd round against Almabayev, despite getting taken down, was still trying to push Almabayev and trying to finish him. I'm going to be picking Carpenter in this one, though. I do think that he's going to have a size disadvantage, which is a little bit concerning given the matchup, but I think that he should be able to find success. Now, Baysangur Susurkaev fights against Jorden Santos. I don't need to tell you guys my feelings about Susurkaev. I know everyone's jumping off the train. I don't care. I'm conducting this caboose. I have been the conductor of the caboose since the moment that I first did my tape study for Susurkaev when he fought Murtaza Talha on short notice. I was Really excited about seeing this guy come into the contender series against Talha. I didn't think he was going to make it look that easy against Talha, and he did. And then he beat Eric Nolan. I will be honest, bad performance because Eric Nolan fought upper weight class on short notice. And then again, he fought against Eric McConaughey. Once again, bad performance. I think there's a very large combination of factors that are leading to these bad performances, and I am admitting to potentially making excuses for Susurkaev here, but when you do watch Susurkaev's regional tape, I know he has a lot of round 1 KOs. He is patient in every single one of these, and he just happens to find the perfect moment early on because he's a very, very much lower level opponent to what he's been able to fight before. Shane Shibnovsky was trying to wrestle him, and he was able to show good takedown defense in that. But Susurkaev, in a very unique way, really did remind me of Israel Adesanya's striking. I will admit, in the UFC itself, he hasn't really been able to showcase that at all because he has just been playing with his food. He's been making a lot of mistakes, and I know that he's got 11 professional fights, but I think he's actually showing a big experience, sort of maybe mistakes in there, just making bad choices, I would say. But I do think that Susurkaev has better striking defense than what he's been showing in the UFC so far. And Jorden Santos, I don't think is the guy to do it, man. Jorden Santos, he's also a striker. He's a bit of a brawler. If you want my opinion, I thought he got robbed against Ozzy Diaz, and I'm going to talk about that in a moment because Ozzy Diaz is also on the card later on. But he just went out there and beat Danny Barlow. That's a pretty big win for Santos. But I view Santos as a striker that does not have the technique to match Baysangur Susurkaev's technique. I don't think that Santos is going to be able to offer much for Susurkaev in the kicking range. Santos is more of a scrapper. I would say he's a boxer, but trust me, when he's throwing his hands, they're just not very technical strikes. He really is going in there and looping a lot of punches. Susurkaev, on his best days, is throwing straights, he's throwing knees, and I think he does have the power to knock out Santos in this fight here. Baysangur Susurkaev is a very big favorite here. He's minus 500. I think he is going to look good in this matchup. I know people are going to try and fade Susurkaev because he has looked bad in the UFC career. That is true. I'm still conducting this train. I don't care. I'm willing to sit front row as Baisangur Susurkaev raises up the ranks as only 25 years old in the middleweight division. And now we have Pat Sabatini fighting against William Gomis. When this fight first sort of graced my eyeballs, I was actually thinking I might be going with William Gomis. But then I feel like I had like some sort of enlightening moments maybe, which was just actually doing a little bit of research on the fight. And I know Pat Sabatini's been on a good run, but I didn't realize how good it was. I think he had 14 minutes of control time against Joanderson Brito, 13 and a half minutes against Brito. I think it was over 10 minutes of control time against Sabatini as well, just took him down over and over and over again. And Pat Sabatini has just been having a wrestling masterclass over the featherweight division at the moment, and against William Gomis, that is actually something that he struggled with in his UFC career. Now, you go through Gomis' career, he got taken down by Francis Marshall. Francis Marshall went 2 for 5 against him, off the top of my head. I think Joanderson Brito even took him down a couple of times, went 2 for 4. I know it was a 50% takedown attempt success rate that he did find against Brito in that fight, against Gomis in that fight. So, when Gomis has fought wrestlers, even Ruchala took him down. Ruchala is not a wrestler. When Gomis has fought people that have been able to have the ability to attempt good takedowns and try and take him down, he's been getting taken down. And I think that Pat Sabatini just has the ability to do that. Now, Sabatini has had a combination of very fun fights and very boring ones. There has been fights recently for Pat Sabatini where he has had the control time, but he's not really throwing many strikes doing it. He's just been dominating that top control, trying to threaten submissions. There's other ones where he's just throwing ground and pound after ground and pound after ground and pound. And he's finding a lot of damage in these dominant positions that he's finding as well. So it kind of just comes down to, do you think that Gomis can defend the takedowns? And I don't actually think that there's a lot of evidence that does suggest that he can, aside from the fact that Gomis is a 6 foot tall featherweight. There's a lot of images of Gomis floating around recently too on his Instagram, and he's looking like he actually has put on a little bit of muscle, a little bit of size. But even then, just from what I've seen, Gomis hasn't shown an ability to defend takedowns very successfully, especially when you're taking on a guy as high level as Pat Sabatini. I think if Sabatini wins this fight, you're going to see him in there with a big time matchup. I think you are going to see Sabatini maybe fighting a ranked opponent if he can get past William Gomis here, because it would have been Chepi Mariscal, Joanderson Brito, and JSP back to back to back to back after a loss to Diego Lopez. So I think Sabatini's on the rise. I'm picking Sabatini by decision. This is one of those fights I'm not crazy excited for. Not because I don't like Sabatini, not because I don't like William Gomis, but it is truthful that Sabatini's performances can be a bit hit or miss. Some of them can be entertaining and some of them can be quite the opposite. Now, Roman Kopylov fights against Marco Tulio. I am picking Roman Kopylov here as the underdog. I am a little bit surprised that so many people are backing Kopylov here on the Tapology sort of votes, but I think I can see it. And the reason why I think a lot of people quite like Kopylov here as a dog is probably just for the same reason why I'm picking him, to be honest. But when I watched Marco Tulio fight against CLD, the difference between these two guys was the speed. The speed was the single biggest differentiator between those two guys, because instantly you could tell, within 10 seconds of the fight beginning, CLD's landed a kick to the leg, a kick to the body, just like that. And Tulio's still waking up. And that is the story of the fight. Marco Tulio, he tries to capitalize on mistakes that CLD was making with the spinning attacks, because CLD is a very flawed fighter. But nonetheless, Tulio, he tries to get Leroy Duncan down, doesn't find a crazy amount of success doing so, and the second round rolls around, and this is where I get a little bit worried when it comes to Marco Tulio, and Tulio is a bit gassed. I thought he was looking pretty tired in there, and I think it comes down to how Marco Tulio fights. Marco Tulio goes out there with the intention of throwing every single strike with 150% power, and he just wants to knock you out, man. He has got no other intentions when it comes down to him in the cage, and I think that is definitely something that's going to be sapping on his cardio. It might not be necessarily the fact that he doesn't have good cardio. I think it's just the way that he goes out there and throws strikes. It's just that he just does it not in an efficient manner at all, because everything he's trying to throw, he's trying to land, and it has worked for him so far. Of course, the win over Tresean Gore has aged quite well. Even the win over Potieria found some success recently as well in the UFC, and so it's aged relatively well too. The win over Mateusz Close also aged well, because he just beat my boy. He just beat my boy Buafia, but that's nonetheless, the point is, I look at Roman Kopylov and I see that he's on a losing streak. He lost to Paulo Costa. That loss doesn't look bad anymore. Of course, I did pick Costa to actually beat Azamat, so that was a pretty good pick by me, just to shout myself out. But anyways, I watched the fight against Gregory Rodriguez, and Kopylov's takedown defense in that fight held up quite well. Now, I know that Gregory Rodriguez ain't really going up there anymore, trying to take down opponents over and over and over again, but he was credited with the attempts, and Kopylov was credited with defending them quite well, because that has been Kopylov's sort of struggles in the past, has been the takedown defense, and Marco Tulio will look to grapple here. Marco Tulio is a shooter box guy. The shooter box guys aren't just Muay Thai strikers. The shooter box guys are Muay Thai and BJJ fighters. Tulio, at 185 pounds, has good BJJ, so it's going to come down to, do you think Kopylov can keep the fight on the feet? Because, as I was inferring to at the start of this breakdown for this individual fight, I think Kopylov is the much faster fighter out of these two guys. He's got a very odd way of kind of going about his striking, because his hands are kind of low, but they're kind of not. They're not really by his chin. They're kind of wide, but it just works. He's throwing from the hips at moments too, and when Kopylov is on, he's really on. And I also do believe he's got the better cardio out of these two guys, because even in those two losses, he was still trying to push the pace in the third round to make it happen. I'm going to be picking Kopylov here. I think that he is the better striker out of the two. I think he's got the better cardio out of the two. I do believe that he's improved that takedown defense enough to keep the fight on the feet. As for Tulio, I do believe if you're picking Tulio, you're either picking Tulio to knock out Kopylov, or you're picking Tulio to be able to take down Kopylov with success. And just from what I saw, I personally don't believe that he's going to be able to do that, so I'm going to be picking Kopylov to win this fight by decision, by defending the takedowns, landing more volume, because I do think he has a speed advantage. And now Jim Miller is going to be fighting against Jared Gordon, and I'm not 100% sure if this is a retirement fight for Jim Miller. You guys are going to have to tell me if it is. He is from New Jersey. This card is in New Jersey, so it would make sense if it was, but I also do feel like maybe if it was, they would have him on the main card, just because Jim Miller is, he's Jim Miller. He's been around for so long. I think he's got the second most finishes in UFC history behind Charles Oliveira. He has had good performances at the age of 40 years old, 40 years and older. Even against Alexander Hernandez had a good fight, and then after that, got a couple of finishes, beat a couple of prospects. Against Bobby Green, that wasn't a good performance at all, to be fair, but against Chase Hooper, a decent performance. And the thing about Jim Miller is, yes, he is nearly 43 years old now, but we know what he's going to bring to the table. The hands are pretty good. Like the lightweight division is not an easy division to navigate, and the fact that a 42-year-old Jim Miller has been able to go out there and find some success at the weight class is very, very impressive. And the boxing has held up, I think, as well. And, of course, we know Jim Miller for his very good BJJ and ability to grapple. But I do think when I've been watching Jared Gordon's fights, Gordon actually has been impressing me a little bit. Gordon is one of those guys, I will admit, I can never really get a good read on. He doesn't fight all that often, and when he does, he has pretty mixed performances. He of course, fortunately, situation with Bobby Green, and what should have been disqualification, but there's neither here nor there. He knocked out Mark Madsen, former silver medalist at the Olympics in Greco-Roman wrestling. Nasrat Haqparast was a fun fight. Knocked out Thiago Moises in what was a pretty good performance, because Moises, just went to a pretty tough fight with G-Money. But I thought in a loss, he actually looked pretty good against Garcia. I know he got finished in that fight, but I thought he was holding his own in the boxing, was throwing out a lot of volume in that fight too. And I think if you do that against Jim Miller, I don't think that Jim Miller has the same sort of level of power, or just level of power really is kind of what I'm trying to get to, as a Rafa Garcia, who's a borderline top 15 fighter now that he's just beaten Alexander Hernandez. And as for Jim Miller, he is 42 years old at the end of the day. I'm picking Gordon to win this fight. I mean, I was actually considering picking Jim Miller here, but I'm not confident in this at all. I'm not going to pretend like I am, but I do think that Jared Gordon, nearly 30 professional fights. I know that last weekend in Perth, we had a showcase of some of the worst fight IQ maybe ever put together on multiple fights on the same card. I think a 30-fight veteran knows that he just shouldn't really mess around with the grappling too much against A10. I'm going to be picking Jared Gordon to win a decision here. It should be quite fun. I think Miller's going to have his moments. Hopefully the crowd is popping for Miller. It could be a Miller retirement fight. I'm actually not 100% sure if it is, because I also thought that the fight against Hooper was his retirement fight, so maybe he's trying to finish on a dubski. I'm not too sure. But now we can move on to Grant Dawson versus Mateusz Rebecki. I'm going to give you a warning. This might be the worst breakdown I've ever done on my channel. Because I am picking Grant Dawson to win this fight, but the tape study does not lean you in that direction at all. And I kind of watched Grant Dawson tape, and I thought, man, like I'm seeing what I didn't want to see, because I want to pick Grant Dawson in this fight, and I'm just going to do it anyway. But I was watching Grant Dawson. I watched Grant Dawson versus Manuel Torres. I wish I didn't. I cannot believe that Grant Dawson made it into the top 15 of the hardest division to make it into the top 15, in my opinion, at the lightweight division, with absolutely zero striking athleticism at all. Zero boxing fundamentals at all. Zero striking defense. Just nothing. You watch this fight against Manuel Torres. I don't know what he was thinking. He starts the fight. This is the first strike he throws in the round. I'm gonna have to try my best to emulate it here. And he throws himself off balance, and he throws that same overhand jab hook sort of hybrid multiple times, and that's actually how he got knocked out, because Torres countered him and then put him out off that, because he was able to read it. I think Grant Dawson was just landing on Torres, and Torres wasn't actually throwing anything back, and he was just thinking, oh, I've got this guy, I'm the better striker, I'm feeling myself, I'm feeling like Floyd Money Mayweather in the cage right now. And then he got countered and knocked out. And aside from that, the story of Grant Dawson isn't really the striking, aside from Bobby Green, but he's not trying to strike, he's trying to wrestle, but he didn't shoot a single takedown in 2.5 minutes against Manuel Torres, the man that I would say probably nearly ended the life of Nicholas Motta. Did anyone remember this? One of the KOs of the year. Only got number 19. I think it should be top 5, but like are we being serious? Grant Dawson, you thought that you were going to strike with this guy? didn't shoot a single takedown. So I'm thinking, if Grant Dawson doesn't shoot a takedown against Rebecki, Rebecki's going to have so many opportunities to knock him out, because what does Rebecki do? He's a very high volume striker, even in losses. I think Rebecki landed, or at least I don't think he landed 100 significant strikes in this fight against Chris Duncan. That was a banger. Against Ludovic Klein, same story. Couldn't really get the takedowns off. Gassed out a little bit himself because he doesn't have good cardio, but still was able to get off a lot of significant strikes in that matchup. I think he got 50 off in that fight. And then against Uruguay, same sort of story. Got a very significant amount of... I actually think he got outlanded by Uruguay in that fight, but he was able to get the wrestling going himself. And that's the thing about Rebecki, is he is a pretty well-rounded fighter. He can wrestle, he can defend takedowns. He's incredibly dangerous in the first round. Not necessarily because I think Rebecki has a lot of power, but because he throws out a lot of volume in the first round. You know, he's got that very odd style. He's always moving his head, and he's just throwing. He's throwing hooks. He's just coming forward, man. That little 5'7" lightweight. He's just going forward, and he's just bombing away. But he hasn't got a KO in the first round at the UFC level. I know against Lidio, I mean, that wasn't there. He got knocked down. Anyway, the point is, I think that Dawson can survive round 1 against Rebecki, and I think if he actually attempts takedowns here, he's going to get them. He is going to have a very significant size advantage against Rebecki. The problem is, I watched the tape. The tape doesn't lean towards the Dawson pick, I don't think, at all. And that scares me, and that makes me concerned. But, you know, I'm just going to trust my balls on this one. Lowest confidence pick on the card, for sure, because I don't even think I should be picking Dawson to win this fight, but I'm going to be doing it anyway. As I said, this would be the worst breakdown I've probably done in a long time, because as I just said, I think that Rebecki has the path to victory, and it's very obvious to me. But I think that Dawson, with the size advantage, should go out there and take down Rebecki. If I see no striking improvements out of Dawson, I just follow my Twitter, because I will say some crazy stuff. But let's go on to Yoel Alvarez versus Yaroslav Amosov. I'm picking Yaroslav Amosov in this fight, and I think that this is going to be the fight that is going to maybe divide the fan base. There kind of is always one fight on a card. It can be a little card, it can be a big card like this one, where everyone seems to have a different opinion on the fight. Everyone's going crazy about it. This is the fight everyone's got to watch, and this is the fight which all of the hindsight warriors will go nuts over. And I'm on the Amosov side. I don't feel that great about it, but I at the same time, I'm also kind of thinking about what Yoel Alvarez brings to the table at 170 pounds, and so far, he's kind of lost what made him so dangerous and so scary at 155, because if you guys remember, Yoel Alvarez might have been the single largest lightweight to ever step foot in a UFC octagon. He was a massive lightweight, maybe even bigger than Sam Patterson or even Jalen Turner. That would have been a nutty fight to see, because they would have both been absolute big boys. But Yoel Alvarez, he's a very dangerous, and he was so unbelievably dangerous at 155 pounds, but he's moved up to 170, fought against Luque at 170, landed over 100 strikes on the chin of Luque, which is crazy, and didn't knock him out, which was quite surprising to me. There wasn't a lot of grappling in that fight, which is interesting, because Yoel Alvarez, he is known for a very, very dangerous submission game, even though a lot of these submissions are defensive submissions. You know, you've got the guillotines, you've got the Das. I'm trying to think of, another Das, but a lot of defensive-based submissions. And maybe he's going to throw one of those up against Amosov, because Amosov, he's going to wrestle in this fight. He's going to try and take down Yoel Alvarez, and I think he's going to be able to do that with pretty good success. I don't necessarily see Alvarez just bonking Amosov on the feet. You know, I know Amosov is a Bellator guy, and I will put my hand up and I will say I have overrated Bellator guys ever since the UFC started signing them. Hand on heart, I am aware. But at the same time, he has fought dangerous strikers in his Bellator career, and he has fought dangerous strikers in his UFC... No, he hasn't. That was a lie. I was about to start capping. He did fight Douglas Lever, beat Douglas Lever. Jason Jackson, horrific performance, though, for him, I will admit, in that fight. But that's the story of how you beat Amosov. You need to defend the takedowns. You need to be able to beat him up on the feet. I don't think that Alvarez can defend the takedowns. I don't think he can do step one and the two-step plan to beat Amosov. So I'm going to be picking Amosov to beat Yoel Alvarez, and I think that the breakdown is kind of as simple as that. I feel like if you're picking Yoel Alvarez, You are believing that he is the more dangerous fighter, which I also agree with. I do think he's the more dangerous fighter, but I also think that you have to sort of believe that Alvarez is going to give himself those opportunities to be the more dangerous fighter in the fight. And what I mean by that is he's either going to be able to get off a defensive submission or he's going to be able to land the damage on Amosov. Whereas for me, I don't think Amosov's going to give him those opportunities. I know Amosov is not that good of a striker, but even for a guy that is going to be shorter in this matchup, he's a big boy for the weight class. Very talented wrestler. Very good dominant control once he gets the fight down to the ground. We've seen that he's out-wrestled very good wrestlers. He out-wrestled Logan Storley, who just won last weekend as well. And I do think we are going to see Yaroslav Amosov be able to take down Yoel Alvarez without getting knocked out first or defensively submitted. And he's going to win a decision, which is why I'm picking Yaroslav Amosov to win a decision in this matchup against Yoel Alvarez. And now we can get on to what on the Tapology bout order is the final fight on the prelims. This is a step down in competition for Ateba Gautier. I am not being willing to be convinced otherwise. Now, Gautier, he did not have a good performance against Andrei Pulayev, and I think that maybe that's why the UFC has decided to give him Diaz, because I'm going to be honest, I think Diaz is a much more approachable matchup for Gautier than what Diaz is, than what Pulayev was, because Diaz is more of a stand and bang kind of guy. He's a big guy for the weight class, but when you watch Ozzy Diaz fight, he really likes to throw the hands. He is a guy that wants to box and he wants to throw down. When you look at the Pulayev fight, Pulayev impressed me in that fight, actually, I will admit, because I have always said this. Throughout Gautier's UFC career, there has been a very common denominator, and that has been that everyone has been scared to stand in front of him. He fought against Naito. Naito, I actually did pick to win that fight, just to put that out there. Naito did bring it. He was just a fat 5'8" Japanese man, but he was bringing it to Gautier. He was coming forward. He was attempting his takedowns. He was flopping all over the floor like Taito Ivasa was last weekend. But he was bringing it to Gautier, and he was finding his own little pockets of success in there. Then you go to Medina. Medina's scared shitless. He gets knocked out. Robert Valentin. He's scared shitless. He gets knocked out. Tristan Vines. He's scared shitless. He's running away from them. He gets knocked out. But then for Pulayev actually just stood there with Gautier, and he fought him. And I think that's how you've got to beat Gautier. You actually have to fight the guy, And Pulayev didn't really do it that much, because at the end of the day, Pulayev does rely on his own 6'3", 6'4" frame with his own crazy reach, and his body kicks are money. And that really was a big story of the fight, was Pulayev's kicks to the body of Gautier. He would land them and Gautier would react, and he would really find the success from range. Whereas I think if Ozzy Diaz does what I'm trying to say that you need to do, maybe he can catch Gautier in a little bit of trouble and he can pressure Gautier. But the problem is, I'm not fully convinced that what Ozzy Diaz's skill set that he brings to the table is defensively sound enough to do what you need to do. And maybe the fighter that I'm just imagining in my head that needs to close the distance in Gautier to beat him just doesn't even exist. And Gautier just is going to become the next Cameroonian superstar like Ngannou did, and he is just going to knock out his way to the top. But let's be honest, guys. I don't think that Ozzy Diaz is much of a wrestling threat for Gautier. Even then, I also don't think that Ozzy Diaz is crazy much of a striking threat to Gautier. Even though he got knocked out by Ming Yang Zhang, we ignore that. I think that Santos won this fight, man. I really do. I think Santos won the first 2 rounds against Diaz. I think that was a robbery. You go on MMAdecisions.com. I think everyone agrees that it wasn't a good decision either. But we're going to talk about decisions later on as well when we get to Usman Buckley. But Let's go with Gautier by KO. I'm going to go with Gautier in the KO in the first round. I know a lot of people are giving him shit for giving just really lower level matchups for the UFC middleweight division, because he is just kind of building up this resume of knocking out people that just aren't crazy good middleweights. But I honestly, this might be throwing my boy Ralston under the bus, because I'm wearing my Ralston hoodie. I think Gautier versus Ralston would be a fantastic fight between 2 really good prospects, but yeah, I'm going to be going with Gautier to win this one by knockout. But I do think that we need to see Gautier get a big step up in competition sometime soon. Now we've got the main card time. We've got Bobby Green. I told you guys I would call him king if he beat Paddy Pimblett. I also said I would call him king if he beat Mauricio Rufy. He got memed in both of those fights. He's Bobby to me, okay? taking on Jeremy Stephens. And I'm going to be picking Big Bobby. I'm picking Big Bob on the ass in this fight, man. I do think that he is going to be able to just box up Jeremy Stephens. Now, Jeremy Stephens, I don't really know for sure why he was re-signed to the promotion, aside from Dana White just being like, let's just sign him back for shits and gigs, because he had a shocking PFL run. Even this fight against Miles Price, he looked terrible, and Miles Price is... He's just not one of those guys, you know, that you look at and you think, yeah, like, that's a really good fighter, and then he's coming off a loss in the PFL anyway. He came in there against Mason Jones, gave a very competitive fight for himself, to be fair, given the circumstances, given the odds, given the expectations. But Mason Jones always does that to himself. Even against Axel Sola, Mason Jones, he just finds a way to put himself in hell and have to fight back out of it. And that's why Mason Jones is always in very fun fights. I think Marwan Rahiki is a little bit of a victim of that to himself when he's not fighting someone that's making his debut on less than a week's notice. But I think for Bobby, man, I really can see this just being a stand-up fight between two guys that are boxers. Jeremy Stephens has been doing his boxing, professional boxing. He's been doing bare-knuckle boxing. He's been standing and banging with the boys. And that's what Bobby wants to do, man. Bobby's got his own style, really. You know, he's got his hands low. He's doing the shoulder roll, which I really should know the name of, but it slipped my mind at the moment. And he's been finding success recently. He took on the big boy, Lance Gibson Jr. on short notice. I thought he won that fight quite soundly, and then Lance Gibson Jr. just got a massive dubski recently himself, and then just knocked out Daniel Zellhuber, who the UFC have been desperately trying to build. I'm picking Bobby. I'm picking Big Bob on the ass to beat Jeremy Stephens. I'm going to be picking him to win by decision. I know Stephens has just had, 51 professional fights in his career, but he hasn't really been getting finished. I know Mike Perry knocked him out, but he still is a tough guy. I just don't really know what Jeremy Stephens' intentions are in the world of MMA right now. I even feel like Jeremy Stephens versus Jim Miller could have been a pretty fun potential retirement fight for Big Jimmy, but yeah, I'm going to be picking Bobby Green to win to open up the main card. Now we can get to another dog, guys. You guys say that I don't pick that many dogs. I'm just not that good at picking underdogs. I'm sorry, but we've been having a good roll this year, you know? And this is it. I'm picking Buckley to beat Sean Brady. Maybe a surprise to many, but I think the Usman performance, I think it's very... what would the word be? I feel like people look back at it in a much more negative light than what actually happened. To start with, I am a big fan of scoring 10-8 rounds. Usman didn't get a 10-8 round in round 1, okay? And then on top of that, I think Buckley won 2 rounds. I'm sorry, I don't know if that's a hot take or not, but I watched that fight back and I saw that a lot of the judges were giving 49-46s to Usman. I thought, okay, wait, what was the second round that you gave? And then I jumped on MMAdecisions.com and it seemed like no one was giving Buckley the third round. When I think that Buckley has a very strong case for winning the third round, and he won the 5th round quite clearly. I mean, everyone scored it for the 5th, but the point is, after the first 2 rounds, and I am going to include 4th round in here, which Buckley lost, in my opinion anyway. I'm not claiming that Buckley won 3, 4, and 5. Definitely not doing that. But I'm claiming that Buckley won 3 and 5. Because he was able to defend the takedowns a lot more successfully, or at least defend the initial entry, I should say, a lot more successfully in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th rounds. So he was really starting to kind of get his stuff going. The problem is, he started to get going way too late in the fight. And yes, I am aware, this is a 3-round fight. It's not 5 rounds. He doesn't have 5 rounds to try and deal with Sean Brady's wrestling. But the point is that I think that the fact that we saw Buckley be able to actually sort of figure it out mid-fight gives me confidence that now he can go into a training camp and just figure it out way more. And another thing that I think you need to appreciate about that matchup, especially when I did pick Buckley with confidence against Usman in that fight, Usman found so much success against Buckley because Usman was finding so much success in his striking. And I know that I have never really rated Usman's striking over his wrestling. I think that was the performance that really kind of cemented it. And I know it's crazy to say that about a washed Usman with no knees. That really cemented the striking of Usman to me, because I always kind of thought it was a bit of a mythical thing that people sort of kind of made up. And I know he knocked out Masvidal and stuff like that. But no, against Buckley, He was jabbing the shit out of Buckley all night long. Buckley couldn't close the distance because, let's be honest, Buckley, he doesn't have a striking style that favors a rangy striker. And I know we just saw JDM get absolutely demolished by Prates. I think if you put Buckley in there with Prates, he would struggle even more because the way that Buckley strikes, he really has like an MMA boxing style, if that makes sense, where he's not actually fighting behind a jab. He's not fighting behind a 1-2. He's throwing a lot of looping shots. He's throwing overhands. He's throwing hooks. But he's doing it with good enough movement and good enough athleticism to actually kind of get away without leaving himself crazy open to counter strikes. The problem was, as I said before, Usman was finding so much boxing success on the feet that was what was leading to his takedown attempts being that much more effective. And when Usman got those takedowns, Buckley could not defend them at all, especially in the first 2 rounds, really. The third, fourth, and fifth, yes, Buckley really found it in the 5th round in the defense, but I thought he did enough damage to start the 3rd round to win the round, and then the 4th round, Usman did enough, but that's neither here nor there. That fight happened. It was a very, very, very good performance for Usman. And now we've got to talk about Sean Brady. I'm willing to say it, and I'm willing to tell you guys straight up off the bat, I have picked against Sean Brady so many times, and he just keeps on winning. But it's because I dislike his striking so much. We saw him get TKO'd by Bilal Muhammad. I picked Calvin Gastelum to beat this guy. I don't think I picked Brand to beat him. But I then picked Leon Edwards to beat him too. And then after that, I mean, the performance against Michael Morales, that was the most recent performance. That was a bad one. He got finished quickly. He got finished easily against Morales. He got broken. And I'm not going to say that Buckley can do the same thing, because I don't think that Buckley kind of exudes that sort of damage. No, not that damage. That sort of danger that someone like Morales does when they're in the cage. But I do think that Buckley has the ability to pressure Brady and find the success against Brady, because Brady just does not have that striking threat that Usman has, or that anyone in the welterweight division has before he can get the takedowns going. Now, once he gets the takedowns going, the wrestling is fantastic. Look at what he did to Edwards. You know, he broke Edwards with the wrestling. And Edwards, so he can have Edwards 2-0 against Usman, man. With takedown defense included, even in the first fight, he out-grappled Usman in the first fight, put him in a rear naked choke. But, so maybe you could just kind of look at that and MMA method out, but I see it a little bit differently, because I just see that Brady cannot threaten strikes against Buckley to really sort of open up the takedown attempts like Usman was able to do. I think that Buckley, in this fight, another thing too that I think should be noted, there's no way that Buckley didn't just see himself getting ragdolled by Usman like that and think, okay, I need to not defend and not worry about defending takedowns anymore. Like, there's got to be, Buckley just went straight back to the drawing board about the takedown defense. And I do think his striking style actually allows for good takedown defense, even though it didn't show up against Usman, because Usman, as I said, was finding the success with the jabs, this and that. Against Brady doesn't do that on the feet. You know, he's got a little bit of boxing, but it's still not enough. It's not enough to set up takedowns against a guy that I think actually can defend the takedowns against Brady and actually can find the success on the feet with his power, with his hooks. And I'm going to be picking Buckley to win by KO. Hopefully that breakdown made sense. I really was quite passionate about that fight when I did do my breakdown. But anyway, Alexander Volkov fights against Wilder Cortes-Acosta. I'm surprised to see that much love on Volkov. I am picking Volkov myself because I do think that this is going to end up being a fight that Volkov thrives in. But Wilder Cortes-Acosta, he's quite underrated, I think. And I know you might even think Artem's overrated because he's been able to find this, and that. But if you really look into it, the win over Gaziev, the knockout over Gaziev in the first round, the first 90 seconds of the fight, it's aged well considering how hard and how often Brando Pericic was landing on Gaziev, you know what I mean? And I believe he took that fight on very short notice, a 3-week turnaround between the Zaliha fight and the Gaziev fight. And then I do believe as well the Lewis fight was on short notice for both fighters, including Lewis as well. But the thing about the Lewis fight was I watched that live and I was very disappointed in what I saw. I would say from both guys, to be honest. I thought that Acosta didn't have a good first round, and then the second round, that finish was so weird because now looking back at it, I think that Lewis just death-gassed and he just quit on himself, because what happened was Lewis was really throwing the looping Grant Dawson type swimming Juliana Pena after 24 beers sort of strikes, and he didn't land them, and then he threw a couple more. Wilder Cortes-Acosta landed what did not look like a strong counter. I watched it back a couple times, even in the moment. Was not a strong counter, and Lewis just collapsed. He just went on his back and took ground and pound and lost. He just gave up. I'm going to be honest. I think he just gave up. And it's a shame because I know that Lewis was credited with like a 15% striking accuracy, but I thought Lewis wasn't looking that bad in that fight in particular. But where I was trying to go, though, was in that matchup, Cortes-Acosta was fighting the perfect fight for Volkov, where Waldo was trying to fight Lewis from range with pretty low striking volume. Whereas you look at someone like Alexander Volkov, and that's what Volkov wants to do. He's 6'7" with an 80-inch reach. He's going to be taller than Waldo, and he's going to have the range. He's going to have the height advantage too. And I also think this might be a hot take. I don't know. I think he's got better kicking game than Waldo. I know Waldo's really started to implement leg kicks into his game after the leg kicks really exposed him early on in his career. That's what people were doing against him and giving him a lot of hell. But I think that Volkov's kicking game is better than Waldo. Waldo started to offensively leg kick a lot. I think that Volkov does it better. I think he kicks the body well. He's quite athletic for a big boy. Especially now he's back up to 260 pounds. Volkov's weight is always kind of going up and down. And I also think as well, on top of that, we just saw Volkov beat, quote unquote, because, it was the Gane split decision loss, a more technical striker than Waldo. And I know that's a bit of MMA math, but you're just going to have to hear me out a little bit here. The point is, Waldo Cortes-Acosta is a boxer, and he does have leg kicks, but he's also got a big weakness to leg kicks as well on top of that. He can offensively wrestle, but I strongly don't believe it's going to be good enough to take down Volkov, given that what Volkov showed against Jorden Almeida. I know he got taken down in that fight, and it was a damage over control argument you can make, but the point still stands. I don't think Acosta is going to be able to take down Volkov with success. So then we kind of get onto the conversation of, I think that Volkov's going to be able to beat him at range on the feet over 3 rounds. So I'm going to be picking Volkov in this fight. I'm not too sure if that's going to be a popular pick or not, because he is the favorite. He is very favored on Tapology, but Waldo does just have, I guess, like a lot of hype right now because he is beating guys on short notice. He has shown he's got the power on the feet to knock out Gaziev in 90 seconds. But as I said, I don't think Volkov gets caught in that, and I think that we're going to see Volkov fight from range. And I think if he does beat Waldo, I know they've got an interim title shot conversation right now, and it's very awkward between Gane, Pereira, Aspinall. Jones is retired now, I'm 99% sure, but you just never know with him. So, yeah, who knows what's going on with the title situation. But as for Volkov, I do think that he was robbed of his opportunity when he got that split decision loss against Gane. So I think now the winner of this fight, no matter what, will at least be a backup maybe for that Freedom Fights card or whatever. But yeah, we'll just kind of see how that goes, I guess. So now we're going to be moving up to the co-main event of the evening. It's going to be Joshua Van, one of the youngest champions in UFC history, now fighting against Tatsuro Taira, a 26-year-old challenger. I don't know if there's a stat between these two guys, but this is one of the youngest total overall title fights I have personally seen, or at least that I can think of off the top of my head, because Joshua Van is a 24-year-old champion. Tatsuro Taira is a 26-year-old challenger. These guys have a combined age of like 50 years and 10 months or something like that. These guys are not old for a championship fight. They're only 24 and 26. We usually see guys peak anywhere between the age of, 28 years old, and then the title fights usually happen around the age of 30 to 35, give or take, you know what I mean? And these guys are beating that schedule by about 10 years each. It's incredible. Now, to get into the breakdown, I am going to talk about this fight, I think, for a very long time, because I am very excited about it. So just to put my pick out of the way, because I could be talking about this fight as an individual fight for 10 minutes or longer, to be honest, because I'm that excited for it. I am going to be picking Tatsuro Taira to win this fight, and I'm going to actually be picking Tatsuro Taira to win this fight by submission. Now, without that out of the way, let's talk about both of these guys and how much they have improved in the UFC career, because I truly believe Joshua Van in the UFC has shown some of the most rapid improvement that I have personally seen out of a fighter in the UFC. I don't think that there's really anyone touching this level of improvement so far that he was able to showcase. Because think about it like this. Joshua Van, he gets to step up into the big show on short notice. He was booked for the Contender Series against Borjas, fought Chimaev on short notice, beat Chimaev, and then beat Borjas after that as well. But before that, on the regionals, yes, he was a dangerous guy. Yes, he was getting the finishes, but I did think against Paris Moran and Cleveland McLean, he did show a couple of weaknesses in that takedown defense, which is something that he was really able to improve upon throughout his entire run in the UFC. But we're going to talk about that in a moment. He didn't have a good performance against Borjas. I don't think that he looked that great against Borjas. Borjas found a lot of striking success. I think that fight alone is why I think people think that Borjas is a good striker, when I think he's one of the worst strikers to ever step foot in the UFC flyweight division. But after that, he goes on a little bit of a run, a bit of a slip against Charles Johnson, but Johnson is just a kryptonite. I actually did pick Johnson to win that fight, and after that, it's been a home run for Van. And the thing about Van is he's done this all in a very quick succession of period of time. He's fought 5 times in a year and 4 months, so he's only fought 5 times in less than 18 months, give or take. And he's just been looking good, and he's been improving over and over again. He's been showing up, he's been getting good performances. Showed that improved takedown defense against Cody Jorden. Showed that improved takedown defense against Ray Saruya. In a way, showed it against Royval on very short notice. He beat Silva June 7th, then beat Royval June 28th, and then he beat Pantoja, albeit by injury, but he beat him about 5 or 6 months later as well after that. Very, very good sort of run that Van has had to get to the title. And I want to talk about a couple of these fights. So against Jorden, at the time, I will admit it's a lot better of a win than it looks like now, because Jorden has just been on a terrible run, unfortunately for him. But we look at the Ray Saruya fight, and I think that this is a very relevant fight, not because Ray Saruya is Japanese, but because Ray Saruya is not just some sort of random wrestler. Ray Saruya is a national champion in freestyle wrestling. I think he's actually an Asian champion in freestyle wrestling. I think he even competed in the world championships as a junior wrestler. I could be wrong about that though, but he is, before transitioning to MMA, at least a Japanese national level wrestler, potentially a world-class freestyle wrestler, and Van's takedown defense in that fight looked good. Now, yes, he did get taken down by Saruya, but when he got taken down, he was able to get back up and get back up relatively easily without actually really giving up his back too much, or even given into some ground and pound in moments, and just in general showed a level of takedown defense improved between March of 2025 and August of 2022 in a span of less than 3 years. Unbelievable improvements in that front, and albeit he's 24 years old, he's of course going to be improving that quickly, but trust me, this is unbelievable stuff, given the accolades that I just credited Ray Saruya with, right? And then after that, he makes a quick turnaround against Silva, he makes a quick turnaround against Royval. Fight of the night performance, one of the better fights even of the year. It was that good. Both guys were throwing and landing crazy volume. Now, because this fight was on such a short period of time turnaround, I did pick Royval to win the matchup, but Van showed up, found a lot of success early, and then I thought that he was fading a little bit late. You know, I thought in the 3rd round, I actually thought that Royval was about to win that decision against Joshua Van, and then at the last minute, Joshua Van gets a knockdown over Royval, and that secures him the round, that secures him the fight, and it secures him the title fight. And unfortunately, the title fight goes the way that it goes, and it sucks. It really does suck that that's how it happened, because Pantoja was on his way to true greatness in the sport. Now, I don't think you could touch Mighty Mouse when it comes to 125. I mean, if anyone's going to do it, it would have to be Van, given how young he is, or maybe Taira even himself. But Van has had an incredible UFC career so far. The problem is, he's really going to need to win this fight to secure himself as the champion, because he is taking on one of the more worthy contenders in this flyweight division, again, Tatsuro Taira, and that is going to be someone that does fight somewhat similarly to Alexandre Pantoja, so that sort of training camp he just had should carry over relatively well. So this one here for Taira, because Taira come in, once again, a fighter that I think has made incredible improvements in his own career. Think about it like this. He comes in, beats Carlos Candelario, who, let's be honest, didn't really have much of a UFC career. Beat Vergara, same situation. Beat Aguilar, who's that one's aged well, but at the time it was a bit of a nothing because Aguilar tried to have him in a guillotine. Very close fight against Chairez, and the striking was exposed, I think, against Chairez more than any of these other matchups. And then after that, he got that knockout over Hernandez, but it's still a bit so-so. Beats Perez, still a little bit so-so, but that was a good way of getting it done with the grappling on the back. And then he lost to Royval. And I think that loss to Royval, and it's so funny that both of these guys have competitive fights against Brandon Royval. The fight against Royval, I think after that loss, something must have happened to Taira, because all of a sudden, and I know it's Hyun Sung Park, who took the fight on short notice, who has lost since, but the striking difference that Tatsuro Taira was able to showcase in that fight between the Park and the Royval fight was just night and day. He looked so much better on the feet, so much more comfortable on the feet in those two matchups. And that actually carried over to the Brandon Moreno fight, because even against Moreno, Taira's in there against Moreno, finding boxing success, finding striking success. And once again, I know it's aged poorly given how bad Moreno looked against Lona Kavanagh, but still, the fact that he was able to go in there toe-to-toe and box with Moreno hurt Moreno in the second round before getting the finish. And yes, it was an early stoppage. I know that Taira was in a dominant position, this and that, but I do think that you should have given Moreno at least a bit more of an opportunity to get out of that position, because the ref says you got to get back and then just instantly stops it. It's like, come on, man. Like, Moreno was working, but there's no here nor there. The point is, he beat Moreno, and he beat him very, very impressively with his grappling. And that's where this fight is going to take place, man. It's going to be, can Van stop the takedowns? Can Van stop Taira from trying to get the fight down to the ground? And once then, if the fight gets down to the ground, can Van do what he did when he took on Ray Saruya, which is get back up safely, without giving up the back, without, giving up ground and pound, without getting taken back down again, chain wrestled, this and that. And I am honestly saying no, which is why I am picking Tatsuro Taira to win this fight. However, I think when it's on the feet, Van is going to be in a good position. Let's be real here. I think that Van is the fastest striker, the fastest boxer in the UFC flyweight division. And the fact that he's in the lowest division, the lightest division, he's probably the fastest boxer in the UFC, just because he is a very small fighter in general. He's small for the weight class, I think. I think he's very small for 125. And he's going to be faster than Taira. Taira still is a developing striker. He is bigger than Van, which I think is going to come with a size disadvantage. I know that it's not just a linear correlation, but I think it is the case in this fight here. So I think it's going to come down to that. Where is Van going to stand in the fight? Can he keep the fight on the feet for long enough moments for him to out-damage Tatsuro Taira? Can he even knock out Tatsuro Taira? Because that's the thing that Van does so well, is he's got sneaky power. I know he hasn't really gotten that many KOs in the UFC, but he has the power to knock his opponents down. He's got the power to hurt his opponents to the body, with the hooks to the head, with the hooks to the body. And as I said, I think he's going to be the better fighter on the feet than Taira. But the thing is that I struggle with when I look at this matchup is I see Tatsuro Taira and the way that he grapples, and it's a very special type of grappling that not every single grappler in the UFC can do, and that's the fact that he doesn't need to get takedowns to win the fight. And what I mean by that is he can take the back up against the cage standing, and he can take the back on the takedowns effectively too. I don't know where I was trying to go there, but the point is Taira doesn't necessarily need the fight down. You saw it against Perez. I know he did win by injury kind of in that fight, but he still dragged him down with a very brutal move there when he was on the back and when they were standing. And I think that Van, being the much shorter fighter in this fight, is going to probably give up a position like that early on. That's actually what I was thinking Pantoja was going to be able to do against Van as well. And I looked at Taira's takedown entries against Moreno, and there was one that I really disliked, but all of the other ones were perfect. He just got Moreno down so easily. Didn't really give Moreno big opportunities to land a big uppercut or a big knee. And I do think he's going to be able to get on the hips of Van and take him down. Now, here's the thing about Van, though. The takedown defense is good. He knows what he's doing when it comes to the takedown defense. He knows what he's doing when it comes to getting back up. But there is still something I'm going to say. I'm going to say every single time I break down a Van fight. He is very small for the weight class. And the fact that Taira is big, and the fact that Taira is getting bigger because he has put on a lot of size. He looked massive, I thought, when he went out there against Brandon Moreno. The size of Taira's back has definitely gotten larger. He's been eating the protein, man. He's been hitting the weights. He's been doing the rows. He's been doing the lat pull downs. Trust me, man. This guy's got wings now. And I do think we are going to see Tatsuro Taira just have a bit of a strength advantage here, which I think is going to matter when it does come down to the very gritty exchanges that are going to take place against the clinch, because Taira is going to be shooting takedowns I think they're going to be initially stuffed, and then it's going to come down to can Taira start to drag or trip Van down to the ground and find the success from there. I'm saying yes, and I'm saying yes to the point that I think he can actually submit Joshua Van here, and I think there's a lot of pressure on Van. Like, let's be honest here, man. He won by injury. It was a fluke. I mean, there's no other way you can say it. He won the title in a 30-second injury. It was a very unfortunate situation. So now for Van, like, yes, he's got the belt, but now he's going to have to defend the belt to really secure himself as a true champion of the division. I know you can just say, oh, he beat Pantoja, he is the true champion, but it just was an injury situation. So I feel like there is a little bit of pressure on that for Van to really secure himself as the champion, because he's carrying himself as if he knocked out Pantoja when that wasn't necessarily the situation. So yeah, Van's really been quite a bit of an asshole over the situation, I'm going to be honest. So I think for Van, he's put a lot of pressure on himself to win this fight and defend his title and really secure himself as the champion. As for Taira is the young up-and-comer. I mean, he's young. He's literally older than Van. He's still the young up-and-comer, man. There's another opportunity for Taira. He blew his last one. That was a big one. He lost against Royval. He did beat Moreno in the last big opportunity he was given, though, to be fair, but this is still a big opportunity for Taira as well. That's just what happens, man, when you got two young champions, a young contender, a young champion. There's pressure on both of these guys to perform. I'm very much looking forward to seeing it happen, and I'm going to be picking Taira to win this fight by submission, and I think he's just going to get it done, being a lot bigger, being the better grappler, and I just don't think that Van's going to knock him out on the feet. We're going to see. Now, Khamzat Chimaev fights against Sean Strickland. I'm going to pick Chimaev in this fight, and I'm kind of just done. Like, falling for all of the BS that goes around Chimaev's fights, you know? Listen, man. I did pick him to lose against Dricus du Plessis, but you need to hear my reasoning for this. In that fight, it was only like a month ago, 2 months ago, he was in the hospital with his friend praying that he wasn't going to die, and then he went out there against DDP and looked fine. You know, I know that's the thing about Chimaev's sort of career. You know, he nearly did pass away due to the worldwide sneezing, I guess is how you would say it. Like, he nearly did pass away because he got the illness. He seems to have some sort of underlying condition that nobody really knows about, but he was still trying to train through it. And, you know, the worldwide sneezing, I mean, it knocked me out pretty bad, but I was a very unhealthy human being at the time. But, like, you know, when you're trying to train through it, trying to push your body through something, and your body's trying to fight something else, trying to fight a virus, you know, like, it's just kind of put himself in a bad situation. He's never been the same since. He's been getting ill. He's been getting injured. As I said, man, there was those scary photos floating around where he had some sort of blood disease, where his, like, face was all red, his arms were all red. He had Guram Kutataledze posting online saying Khamzat's not well. Can you please pray for Khamzat's recovery, this and that? And I was like, oh my god. And then he fought DDP like 2 months after he's in the hospital, nearly dead. I was like, what? So I just thought, there's just no way he's going to be healthy. There's no way he's going to have the cardio for it, because we haven't seen Chimaev's cardio really hold through. You know, that's the situation with the Usman fight. You know, some people think he lost the second and the third round in that fight. The cardio of Chimaev has always been a concern, and he just had 5 rounds of domination over DDP. Now, I will admit, DDP made it easy for him. Chimaev took him down. DDP didn't know how to get back up. DDP didn't even defend the initial entry. But the thing is, with Chimaev, it's like, how many times do I need to see Chimaev go out there, take opponents down at ease, take opponents down at will, and not just recognize the fact that I think he can do that to nearly everyone in the division. And I think he can do that against Strickland, you know? As I said, I did pick DDP to beat Chimaev. I'll put my hands up and say that, but I just told you why. It's because there were so many background things that were so wrong with Chimaev that just didn't make sense. I was like, there's no way we're getting a healthy Khamzat Chimaev. And we did get a healthy Khamzat Chimaev. And now, to my knowledge, we've got nothing about Chimaev. Like, Chimaev hasn't been in hospital with some sort of blood disease. Chimaev hasn't been getting tweeted about by Guram Kutataledze telling everyone he's about to die. He's fine. And now we're going to be getting 100% healthy, or at least what I think is 100% healthy Khamzat Chimaev fighting against Sean Strickland, who is good, but I just don't know if he's going to be able to beat Chimaev. And the thing is about Sean Strickland, he just beat the guy that I thought could give Chimaev some problems. And Anthony Hernandez by defending the takedowns, by beating the piss out of him on the feet. And that's how you got to beat Chimaev. I think you do just have to defend the takedowns. You just have to beat the piss out of him on the feet. But I don't know if Strickland can do that. You know, even on the feet, Chimaev's actually a pretty decent enough striker. He's got the power on the feet. You know, he knocked out the legendary GM3, who arguably just beat Jacob Malkoun last weekend. You know, so I kind of look at this fight and I think, I just don't know what Strickland can bring because I don't believe he can defend the takedowns. That's it. That's it to me. I really just don't really know what else to add. Now, I'm going to have to throw out some hypotheticals now because part of me can see it because Sean Strickland's anti-wrestling is incredible. And once again, straight up and honest, guys, I did pick Anthony Hernandez to beat Sean Strickland, but Sean Strickland's anti-wrestling is some of the best in the division. I'm going to have to go through his career to rattle off some names, but, you know, he even showed this against Abus Magomedov, who found success early. He beat Nasruddin Imavov on short notice up a weight class. He beat Jack Hermanson in a time that Jack Hermanson gave everyone hell. Jack Hermanson beat Joe Pyfer, guys. But, once again, it comes down to that, can he stop the takedown? And I just don't know if he can. The thing about Chimaev is once he gets the takedown, I know he went all 5 rounds against DDP. I know he went 3 rounds against Kamaru Usman. But he is just ruthless, man. He does just jam ground and pound. He does jam grappling. He does have a lot of very strong abilities when it does come down to the ground and pound. And, you know, if Strickland gets taken down, I'm not 100% sure if he can just get back up because Chimaev doesn't let guys back up that easily like that. So, I know it is probably a very disappointing breakdown from me regarding a Chimaev fight because I have always been a bit of a contrarian when it comes to Khamzat Chimaev's fights, especially considering I did pick DDP to beat Chimaev, and I will put my hand on heart and I will admit to doing that. But the thing about Chimaev is I've always recognized his skill set. It's just his health, and his health is fine. And Sean Strickland's a good fighter. Sean Strickland's going to have the press conference of a lifetime, maybe, because let's be honest, Chimaev's got some sketchy shit going on in the background with his boys, but we'll see. We'll see how that goes. I'm excited for the press conference more so than the fight, because I do just think it is going to be Chimaev going out there against Strickland, landing some ground and pound, getting a submission. Yeah, well, I'm curious about it, but I just don't know. I just the odds kind of reflect my feelings too. He's minus 500 favorite. It just comes down to this, guys. How many times do I need to see Chimaev dominate high-level opposition for me to just recognize that he's good? And I know that this is the thing that really drives me nuts, is the cardio of Chimaev has never been good, but against DDP it was fine. He went 25 minutes with DDP, and I know DDP made it easy for him. He just took him down with no resistance over and over again, but like, he just went 25 minutes with DDP, so the cardio's got to be fine. I don't really know what else to add. I'm sorry, guys. I know I just had, like, a really technical, decent breakdown for Van and the rest of the card, and now for this, it's like, oh, yeah, I think Chimaev wins. You know, it's just nothing, but it's because I just don't really know what else to say. I'm sorry, guys. I'm going to leave you with that one. Let me know what you think about that one. As I said, the next live stream I'm going to do will be for the Macau card and all of the other events surrounding it. But, yeah. Have a good one, guys. Thank you very much for watching the video. I appreciate it. And thank you for 11,000 subscribers as well.